Have you ever played a game that scared you? Cursed your dreams with horrid packs of maniacal abominations, laughing at you from the furthest depths of hell? Me either, but Amnesia: The Dark Descent probably came the closest. Released on PC in the year 2010, this game absolutely exploded on YouTube, launching channels like PewDiePie and Markiplier into the stratosphere with clips like this.
Ah, who's there? Oh shit! Oh! Oh! Ah!
A bit oversold, but it resonated with people. As for me, I didn't get around to this game until 3 years later when it came out on consoles in 2016, so I missed a lot of the ear-splitting hullabaloo. I remember this game being freaky, but I struggle to remember exactly why. So today I figure let's relive the madness and rekindle those memories.
My name is... I am Daniel.
Starting the game, we're introduced to our protagonist, Daniel, who appears to have been hitting the sauce. Boy's drunk as a skunk and has some sort of amnesia. He can't seem to remember why he's here, but luckily he's left himself some notes to clear it up. Apparently, he stole his own memories in some sort of 5D chess move to get back at the head of this castle, a man named Alexander.
God willing, the name Alexander of Brandenburg still invokes bitter anger in you. If not...
It does not. But I am not opposed to a little mayhem, buddy. Let's go. We're graced with a couple of tutorials, interacting with objects, lighting candles, how to properly avoid insanity. Apparently, all you've got to do is stand in the calming glow of firelight. Psychiatrists have been fleecing us for years. God damn you, BetterHelp. These lessons culminating in the acquisition of a portable candle, aka the lantern. I should also mention that we're living in the year 1839, so we're a ways away from the invention of the flashlight, or even home electricity. This means that light isn't always the easiest thing to come by, and it's one of this game's most prominent mechanics. Stay in the dark and your vision will begin to blur. Strange sounds accompanying and eventually even hallucinations. Stay in the light and you're dancing the jig of a man with mental clarity. Insanity as a mechanic is typically something I'd be adverse to, because it's just something you have to keep track of in addition to your health bar. However, it works within the Dark Descent, mainly for reasons we'll get into once enemies are introduced. As for now, Daniel's made it to the entrance hall, discovering a tough and pliant goo that he'll need to destroy with the use of his chemical prowess. Searching the area to find this game's main gameplay loop and a few scary scares. Mangled monstrosities now roam the castle's halls, but more importantly, we found Cupright. This is the main gameplay loop of Amnesia, where you'll enter an area, have to find several objects within that area, and then use those objects to access the next area. I suppose you'd classify that as a puzzle, kind of in the same vein as the old Resident Evil titles. The monotony of the search being broken up by tense enemy encounters and slight lore feeds as Daniel finds notes and objects that bring back his lost memories.
What did you call it?
The inner sanctum. My most precious chamber, Daniel. And it lies well beyond the refinery. In fact, it lies beneath the very stone of Brandenburg.
As far as a gameplay loop, I like it. It's not exactly a revolution, but the main draw here is the insanity mechanic and maybe some of the physics-based stuff that we'll get into when it's more prevalent later. At the moment though, we find all the chemistry ingredients and make a pot of acid to destroy the goo. This giving us access to the refinery and then the cellar archives where we encounter a new enemy, the Karnak. It walks on water, invisible to the naked eye, but it's kind of slow and not much of a threat, so you just hop on boxes until you lose it. This escape leading us into the back hall where we find the dopest damn fountain I think I've ever seen. Fish, worm, baby spitting on severed legs. Not sure it would exactly match the current basement aesthetic that I'm going for, but I'm thinking about it. We also get some more updates on what's led Daniel to such bleak surroundings. Apparently, he was an archaeologist of sorts who discovered something beyond mortal comprehension in one of his expeditions. An orb, radiant and breathtaking, which shattered when he tried to take it from the chamber. He has his suspicions that this is the birth of his misfortune, and I think he might be onto something. For now, though, we find some thingies and assemble them together before scratching the chemistry itch again and blowing up some rocks. Who knew box ignition could be so deadly? My word. This destruction leading to more useful trinkets to grab, and some evasive maneuvers that would make even Ezio blush. Have you seen Daniel's calves? Watermelons, my friend. Watermelons. Unfortunately, when we get back to the back hall with our haul, there's been a bit of redecorating. I don't care what anyone says. Dead Naked Man does not up the resale value, and I will die on that hill. However, before we can proceed, we need to get the elevator to hell operational. This requires some finagling, as well as what I would say is the most difficult puzzle of the game, the knob puzzle. It's probably not, but it's the only one that I had to look up, so it's gonna earn that honor. Most of the time, the puzzles of Amnesia that are sent are fairly straightforward, though you might not at first see them as such. Example, you need coal to power the generator thing, but it's not like the coal glows and there's no reference to it other than your reference to real life. Most things that you need to interact with are only indicated as such by a hand icon, and even then it's not an exact science, since everything you can interact with has this hand icon. It's more looking for things that you wouldn't expect to have this hand icon, and then toying around with those things, usually by using something that's in your inventory that you picked up earlier. Of course, the game is filled with variations on this formula, but that's the general thesis, aside from the knob puzzle, which is instead determined by a note. A note that says 8 up and 8 down, which I didn't give enough reverence to, and thus had to resort to the gamer's shame, Google. Anyway, I eventually got the elevator operational, and after a long descent, get it? You'll make your way into the prison area. There's a lot of beds down here, some memories of the poor wretched souls that Alexander had locked away, including a mother-daughter who dug a hole into the lower floors for the daughter to escape.
Please, we don't have time to make the hole any wider. Someone is coming. Hurry! I'll cover the hole with a bed. Everything will be fine. I promise.
Yeah, deeper into the pit. That sounds like the safer direction. We, of course, follow the path, which leads us to a little hole where we put our archaeological skills to the test and do some excavating. It's also here that the enemies will begin to become really meddlesome. Servant grunts or gatherers, or whatever you want to call them, stalking the corridors, thirsty for jawbones. This is where you'll really start to get an appreciation for the insanity mechanic, or at least where I did. This game isn't exactly dripping with enemies. You've got the gatherers, and then you've got brutes later on in the game. They're both hideously deformed and a burden to look at, but the game won't even let you look at them without suffering. This is far and away the best thing about Amnesia, in my opinion. The game's subtly telling you that these creatures are so horrible that you can't even comprehend their visage without going completely insane. It reminds me a lot of the ending of the first Blair Witch, where you've got Mike staring into the corner while Heather screams. You, as Daniel, cowering in a ball, afraid to even look at this entity that you can't possibly hope to wrap your mind around. Then using that as a mechanic so that the danger is present, but you can't even get familiar with it because you can't even look at it. It's such a brilliant design choice that is really what makes this game for me. Without that aspect, the insanity tracker I could take or leave, but with its inclusion, it's what sells the horror of the game. Anyway, I've done a lot down here. Ugly bastards. Eventually, though, I did manage to learn my lore, collect my junk, and use acid to dissolve a rusty door lock. Did I mention I'm proficient in chemistry? Not sure if you guys caught that. Regardless, another zone down, and we head into the castle's aqueducts, which are, again, in need of massive repair. I'm thinking that Alexander didn't run the tightest of ships around here. May have been preoccupied with all the torturings and whatnot. We solve a few more mechanical issues and read some more documents, but this is also where we get my favorite example of a physics-based puzzle. Hark! There be a broken bridge, Captain. What shall we do? Slam it with rocks. The Dark Descent has a couple of instances of this type of thing, but not enough. Nothing's more satisfying than caveman logic. Can we agree on that? Put the chemistry set down and just let me toss a chair through a window. I mean, that's how I solve most of my issues in life. I don't know about you. We continue to work with water for a while, rerouting some pipes to clear a flooded tunnel, before heading down into an experimentation room to shove a copper tube through a guy's head and drink his blood. I'm not sure it's the most appetizing thing, but you mix a little Mountain Dew in there and I'm sure it goes down like candy. In fact, it's so delectable that we get a new enemy who wants a little taste. This is the aforementioned Brute. He functions pretty well the same as the Grunts, but hits harder and hasn't seen the Tooth Fairy since the day he was born. Fortunately, we managed to evade this beefy baddie, but unfortunately, he follows us down into the waterways. Sneaking past him, we find yet more things to finagle with, but these corridors are narrow, and he kills me. I mean, it's no big deal. I'm sure I guess I was supposed to... Okay, this thing is straight up spawn camping me now. What the Luckily, the game decides to take pity on me at some point, and he just disappears. I'm not sure if that's a feature or a glitch, but whatever, man, I'll take it. We make it past yet more waterlogged hallways until we finally reach the end of this hell pit where we find a door. Couldn't just let me leave with my dignity, could you? When we do finally manage to escape the sewers, we come out into yet more prison cells, this time even with a prisoner. He even talks. Well, sort of.
You want to stop, Alexander? Oh my, so Babylon shall fall, you say?
I'll take it. He's the nicest dude that I've met in this castle, and that includes Daniel himself. Because I wasn't sure when I wanted to dig into the lore of this, but our protagonist is kind of a dick. As we learn through the documents throughout the game, Daniel would go to Algeria on an archaeological trip and discover a mysterious magical orb. Taking it from its pedestal, he would return to London and begin looking into the thing's origins. However, as he did, he would find that gruesome fates were beginning to befall those who he'd come into contact with since obtaining the artifact. Fearful that he'd unleash something as he tampered with the orb, he would steal the contact book of Professor Herbert, the man who'd set up the archaeological dig, and begin reaching out to various learned men. This finding him in contact with Alexander of Brandenburg, who claimed to know something of his predicament. Daniel coming to see Alexander as his only hope, when more and more people he'd been in contact with were being found dead. He would arrive at Castle Brandenburg not long after, with Alexander greeting him and astounding him with his knowledge of the orb and its properties. Alexander telling Daniel that he was being followed by something known as the Shadow, and that it would eventually kill him if he weren't able to ward it off. To do this, though, they needed a substance known as vitae, a mystical chemical that's apparently secreted into the bloodstream when a person is put under great duress. This would lead to Alexander taking Daniel under his wing in the art of torturing prisoners in pursuit of this vitae. The Brandenburg Baron telling him that these prisoners were vile people, criminals, murderers, rapists. Daniel believing this lie and growing quite adept at his new craft, which is the inspiration for this next little leg of our journey as we delve into the torture pits, ladies and gentlemen. Daniel reliving the disgusting acts that caused him to want amnesia to begin with, all the while collecting pieces of the orb that had been left near various torture devices. Just your standard walk down memory lane, really. Eventually, you manage to pick up all the pieces of the sphere, but when you go to put it back together, Grunt mosh pit happens, and they absolutely mollywop ya. Daniel gets dragged to a prison cell as the creatures seem to still be under the control of Alexander, who doesn't really want you killed, just out of the way. Fortunately, they don't have much security protocol around here, so we just break through a wall, find a key, and leave. In our time being unconscious, though, the shadow has made its play. Fleshy patches now dot every surface from here back to Agrippa, as he asks us to free him from his hellish undeath. Alexander has bewitched him to stay here, and if you collected several ingredients before your incarceration, you can do some more chemistry and behead him. Don't worry, it's consensual. So, with a head in our inventory, we make our way to the final conflict. Daniel, the bright-eyed archaeologist with a heart of coal, and Alexander, the man who taught him everything he knows. Not really rooting for either of these fellers, to be honest with you, but we make our way to the chancel nonetheless, where we discover the torture straw that broke Daniel's camel back.
Sure, I would kill a murderer to save an innocent, but to kill an innocent to save myself? A cold-blooded murderer.
It would seem that Daniel never really put the pieces together that the people that he was torturing before weren't exactly the monsters they'd been sold as. However, one night, when they were running low on prisoners, he, Alexander, and his men would make their way to a local farm and abduct a family that lived there, taking the mother and their 2 children back to Brandenburg, where the girl would eventually escape and Daniel would track her down and kill her. This act forcing him to face the devil that he'd become, a revelation that he couldn't stomach, leading him to suck down some forgettable Kool-Aid to give him the mental ability to take his revenge on Alexander, who turned him into this degenerate. This leading to the events of the game, and to the moment where we're now about to enter the inner sanctum for the final confrontation. Our first time meeting this demonic baron, who we've heard so much about. And he's naked. What in God's name does having your pecker out have to do with the occult, Alexander? He's just up on stage, fairy floating, naked as the day he was born, and that's the final boss. Dead. Just... dude. And he doesn't even do anything. We just kind of push over some pillars as he half-heartedly tells us not to.
Are you so blind that you see no good in me or evil in Agrippa?
Yeah. I think I trust Agrippa more than you. At least he had the decency to toss on a goddamned loincloth. You know what? He deserves the win. I'm tossing his head in the portal.
Don't worry, Daniel. It will be all right.
And that's about that. Of course, the game does have 2 other endings that you could have gotten. One where you do nothing and Alexander wins, escaping through the portal. Then there's one where you just topple all the pylons and Alexander dies, letting Daniel leave scot-free. I don't particularly like any of these endings, and in my opinion, it leaves a bit of a sour taste at the end of a game that is exceptional. There should have been some kind of final scuffle with the Baron that utilizes the physics of the game, like tossing falling rocks at him as he floats around the room or something like that. Instead, it's just a timed thing where the only danger is indecision. It's an underwhelming finale to a game that kicked overwhelming ass in almost every other aspect.
There's no denying the things I've done, but I have paid my tribute. I gave them that awful man. I did the right thing.
You serious?
I enjoyed almost everything about this game. I thought the puzzles were well thought out and rewarding when you came to a solution. I loved the insanity mechanic, and it's one of the few games where I think that it actually adds to the experience rather than takes away. I even enjoyed the whole light fixture aspect where you have to use tinderboxes to flick up candles. It's all very unique and gives this game a personality that sticks with you. As for the story, it's told to us in a couple of ways. We of course have the documents, the ones being left by Daniel being voiced, and they act as our main narrative. Then less common are these little interactable cutscenes that give us important details that they felt needed more emphasis. You've also got random audios that will pop in when you come to certain locations, like the places that are jogging Daniel's memory of past events. These all come together to form the basis of the narrative, because this game doesn't really even have cutscenes. We don't even have true conversations with NPCs outside of Agrippa, who just talks at us rather than with us, and Alexander, who does the same. Not that I mind that. I'm not exactly looking for branching dialogue options here. We also get some covert lore, which I like, in that the loading screens are the jumbled memories of Daniel's past. If you look at them with this overarching view, you can create a timeline of events from them. But when you're just reading them on a first playthrough, they'll probably just look like gibberish. Henry Bedloe. Do I? What? Overall, this game is amazing, and well deserving of its title as a modern horror marvel. I wanted to go back and replay this to see if it holds up, and you know what? It does. Anyway, that's the video. Be sure to like, comment, subscribe, all that YouTube stuff. Thank you for watching. Hope to see you in the next one.